In this video, we will be discussing elasticity in use and how it can be used to find price in new markets. So in this problem, we have Jill here. Our good friend Jill owns a sandwich shop in the Raccoon City Mall. She sells sandwiches for $7 while observing that the elasticity of demand in this area is negative 3.5. Jill wishes to expand and open a new sandwich shop in Great Lakes Crossing. She sets the price there to be $5.50. What is the elasticity of demand in this new area? The formula we want to use is P1 times the quantity of 1 plus 1 over the elasticity 1. So say the 1 represents the Raccoon City demand function, and that would be equal to price of 2 times the quantity of 1 plus 1 over the elasticity of 2. So this would represent Great Lakes Crossing. So the first thing we want to determine are what do we know? So we know price for Raccoon City is $7. And we also know that the price for Great Lakes Crossing is $5.50. And we know the elasticity of demand for Raccoon City is negative 3.5, and the only thing we don't know is elasticity for Great Lakes Crossing. So knowing what we know, we can start plugging things into that original formula. So we have 7 times the quantity of 1 minus 1 over 3.5, since that 3.5 is negative, and that is equal to 5.5 or 5.50 times the quantity of 1 plus 1 over the elasticity 2. So going from there and using a calculator, we know this, the 7 times the quantity of 1 minus the 1 over 3.5 becomes 5. And we know that's equal to 5.50 times the quantity of 1 plus 1 over the elasticity 2. So if we divide both sides by 5.50, we're then left with 0.909 equals 1 plus 1 over the elasticity of 2. And if we were to subtract both sides by 1, we would be left with negative 0.091. And that would be equal to 1 over the elasticity of 2. So we can solve for the elasticity by multiplying both sides by the elasticity. And that will give us negative 0.091 times the elasticity equals to 1. And if we were to divide both sides by that negative 0.091, we would be left with our elasticity of demand equals to negative 11. So the consumers in the Great Lakes Crossing area are very price sensitive when it comes to their sandwiches. So let's look at a different problem. The owner of a store in the middle of Pontiac sells custom t-shirts. He normally charges $42 and observes an elasticity of demand of around negative 0.3. He wants to move his store closer to Rochester and hears from one of his friends that the elasticity of demand is equal to negative 0.5. What should he set his price to as if he were to move his store to Rochester? So, we know we're going to use that same formula from before. The P1 times the quantity of 1 plus 1 over the elasticity of 1 equals to P2 times the quantity of 1 plus 1 over the elasticity of 2. And we know P1 is 42. We do not know what P2 is. We know the elasticity of 1 is that negative 0.3, and we know that the elasticity of 2 is that negative 0.5. So we can start plugging things in. So we have 42 times the quantity of 1 minus 1 over 0.3, since that is a negative, and that is equal to P2 times the quantity of 1 minus 1 over 0.5. So if we were to throw this entire quantity into a calculator, we would get negative 98, and then that would be equal to price of 2. And if we were to throw this into a calculator, we would get negative 1. And if we were to divide both sides by that negative 1, our price that we should set in the Rochester area is $98. So, in the Rochester area, we know that the consumers are not as price sensitive to large changes in price. So we can charge a higher price in the Rochester area as opposed to the Pontiac area where they are more price sensitive. So for this problem, we have a calculator shop that sells a number of specific calculators all at varying prices. A run-of-the-mill 4-function calculator sells for about $23, and they observe an elasticity of demand for this calculator of negative 2.2. They wish to move to a new location where they determine that the elasticity of demand is negative 4.2. What price should they set at this new location? So, as with all elasticity and use problems, what we can do is start with our formula of price of 1 times the quantity of 1 plus 1 over n to the 1, n1. That is equal to price 2 times the quantity of 1 plus 1 over elasticity 2. And what we know is price 1 is $23. Price 2, we don't know. The elasticity of 1 is negative 2.2, and the elasticity of 2 is negative 4.2. So if we were to start plugging things in, we would have 23 times the quantity of 1 minus 1 over 2.2, and that is equal to P2 times the quantity of 1 minus 1 over 4.2. And if we were to plug this entire thing, the 23 times the quantity of 1 minus 1 over 2.2, into a calculator, we would get 12.55. And then on the other side, we would have P2 times the quantity of 1 minus 1 over 4.2. And if we were to plug that into a calculator, we would get 0.76. So our final price ends up being $16.51. So as the new location has a higher magnitude of elasticity of demand, they are more price sensitive. So $23 would be considered too high for this new location, so they would have to lower their price to $16.51 in order to sell this product. This will conclude the video on elasticity in use.